I want to train you.
You want to work for me?
Welcome to the Daru Strong Podcast.
All right, we're back, and I got my youngster with me, right?
Yes.
I'm gonna call him Zizo, but with Al Mayuf.
Yeah, Zizo Al Mayuf.
I got it right, man. I'm good.
Exactly.
Perfect. So we just started working together, right? And one thing I did want to do is I wanted to get you on the podcast, one, because you're very charismatic, right? And I want to start off our training process the right way by giving you a full interview on air, right? That makes sense,
exactly,
right?
yeah.
So let's go over it, man. You are a young up-and-coming fighter, right? From Saudi Arabia, right? And one of the first professional boxers. Let me go ahead and go over the DM that I got from my man real quick. So that he was trying to, he reached out to me on the DM, and I saw a kid, and he goes, when I read my DMs, I'm looking at the first like couple of sentences, right?
Yeah.
It's gotta ring true. So what he said was, "Hey coach, I'm Zizo. Okay. I'm a professional boxer trained by Hall of Famer Buddy McGirt." Now, when he said that, that's a good way to that's a good way to segment into it. That's a good start. I'm the first ever professional boxer from Saudi, and first local Arab turned professional internationally. So right then and there, he knew what he was doing. He sold himself, right? Sold himself. I said, okay. I kept reading. I just fought at the end of August on the Anthony Joshua and Usyk card in Saudi Arabia. And I'm back for another big card. It sounds like you just trying to sell me on something. Man.
I want to train you.
Man, you were in it. You want to work for me? Shit. This is perfect, man. You be my sales team. Shit. Oh, that's dope. So give them a rundown, man. Like, how'd you get started in boxing? You know, how old are you, and where do you want to take it? You know, let's start from the beginning. How did you get started?
My father is from Saudi Arabia. My mom is Egyptian, and I was raised between Saudi and Egypt, you know, going back and forth. I had most of my amateur experience in Egypt, but I've always trained between both, and I trained between both countries in the Arab world until I was 19 years old. So that's what I mean when I say I'm the first local Arab turned professional internationally, because people don't understand how difficult it is to take into what you trained with in the Arab world and take that abroad in the US, you know, the fight capital, into Los Angeles. That's where I first went. So it's a very, very crazy story of just how you're shooting to be the first ever professional boxer, local professional boxer from your country, from Saudi Arabia. And despite the amount of times and amount of people that tried but didn't really make it as far as you want to go, or didn't make it at all, but you still have to find a way to do it.
Yeah.
You know, especially with the equipment you have in the Arab world, the level of IQ the coaches have, the experience, the exposure. We don't even have boxing on TV. So how is one supposed to grow in the sport and grow his IQ in that specific sport when you don't even see it on TV? The only way to see it is YouTube or streaming and all that stuff.
Yeah, you know you're a Gen Z when you say YouTube. You know, I was just saying, Gen Z, they got that shit in their DNA, technology. You know, so what was it, what made you want to box? Like growing up there and wanting to do this, like why did you want to box?
So I was always into sports, you know, since I was a kid. I loved sports, and I always loved having something to do other than school, you know, and that's something my father always stressed, you know, always have a hobby, always look for something to, you know, just take out your stress, anger, and all the other stuff that could come with life other than just doing school. So I tried a lot of sports when I was younger, and then I stuck to tennis. And I was very good at tennis, you know, when I first started.
Some correlation between tennis.
Yeah. I was very good at it, you know. I'd always win a lot of tournaments and all that. And then fast forward a few years in tennis, because boxing in the Arab world isn't that big, there was no boxing ring for the kids to train at. So how it works in the Arab world is we don't have individual sports gyms. We have a sports center that has all the sports there, and all the people who are training specific sports training together. They just have their own little area and their own little, you know, equipment and all that. So the boxing kids never had nothing. The boxing people didn't have any ring, they didn't have any bags, had nothing. So it was just an old man standing there with his mitts, and it was on the running track. And this is where we warmed up for tennis. So we do all the, eye-hand coordination, the tennis ball exercises and stuff, and the sprints. We do that, but as I'm doing that, I'm always hearing that intensity of the guys lined up waiting for their turn on the mitts, and the intensity of the punches, and then the intensity of when you make a mistake, how you're gonna fix it, and how it's so important to fix it, and all that, So I just got attracted to that more, and then in me, I've always had that character of I always wanted to do something different. I always wanted to feel like I'm meant for something different, and I want to do something different, not just for me, but for my country in Saudi Arabia or the Arab world as a whole. And I saw that in boxing, because there's so much history to be written in boxing for the Arab world, for Saudi Arabia, and I was like, I want to do that.
You want to be the first.
Exactly, I want to be the first. So I went into boxing, and from there, and we're here now.
With the amateurs, like how hard was it to get fights just in that area? I mean, did you have to travel to go get fights, right?
Yeah, so you had to travel, but long story short, we have 3 tournaments a year. A year, you have 3 tournaments. Anything else you're going to get is sparring, and unofficial tournaments where it's like sparring, but the winner gets a certificate or something. That's if you're lucky enough to get the certificate. So we had 3 tournaments a year, and one of them was during Ramadan. Ramadan is that month where Muslims fast. So imagine having to lose weight, train multiple times a day during that month too. So we had states, nationals, and that friendly tournament during Ramadan. And then usually they used to have as well the national team qualifiers.
Gotcha.
So, but it wasn't really a tournament because it was like a select few. They already know who they want to be on the team. So we just had that, and you have to build your experience. Really, that's not enough to build your experience. You have to build your experience alone.
Yeah.
You have to build your experience from you watching the fights, you asking the questions. Some questions the coaches there don't have the answers to, but that's not on them, that's just on the exposure. We're not exposed to the sport. So you have to go and find the answers to those questions by yourself. So if one thing you can't be in the Arab world, and we're not, but in boxing in the Arab world, one thing you can't be is lazy. Because you're going to have to rely on yourself from the minute you start to the minute you probably retire. You're gonna have to retire. You're gonna have to retire relying on yourself, and you're gonna have to start relying on yourself, So not a lot of amateur fights in the Arab world, not a lot of big amateur backgrounds. You're not gonna hear a lot about amateur Olympic champions that come from the Arab world. But that I want to change that. And one of the stuff that I want to change.
When did you decide to go pro?
When I moved to the US, that the plan was always to turn pro. I knew that I had no really big future in the amateurs just because of the political issues.
Is it style though too?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because your first pro fight,
Yeah.
you got a knockout.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So like
exactly.
stylistically, it's a whole different game. This is a whole different sport in a sense.
Yeah, even when in the Arab world, when I used to train, everyone and all the coaches would always say that your style is just better for the amateurs. And some amateur fights I'd lose, and they'd say you lost because you're fighting like a pro. So I always was attracted.
So your style was better for pro. not
Yeah,
amateur.
exactly, exactly. Amateurs really made me hate the sport a little bit. I'm not a fan of amateur boxing as much, but I was attracted to the pros not only because of the style or all of that, but because I knew this is where the history is. This is where I can touch something no one else is going to touch, and until they do, I'll be there and on top. So a lot of Arabs are in the amateurs. There are national teams everywhere, but how many Arabs are turned pro? And how many Arabs are turned pro internationally, where you have to do it in camps with people who have better levels and coaches than you do, better equipment, and they've had that exposure, they've had the hundreds and hundreds of amateur fights, and you have to live now with the people abroad. You have to eat what they eat, drink what they drink, you have to live like them, so you continue. So you're able to continue living abroad and continue training abroad. When that loneliness and all that stuff and the emotions hit, you're gonna have to feel like you're one with that place.
When you started training back home, what was the thing, after tennis, what was the thing that you focused on the most, would you say, from a boxing standpoint and also from a strength and conditioning standpoint? Because, I mean, you coming to me, like, you've had a lot of strength and conditioning coaches, and some of them that I do know. What made you get into that, and what was, like, the most beneficial that you think put you in a good place to be a pro?
Well, it was mostly I was always attracted to working on something that no one else is working on.
Okay.
Or working on something that other athletes have yet to be introduced to that part of their game.
Okay.
So that's why when I first moved to the US 4 years ago, strength and conditioning with amateur athletes, especially young amateur athletes, wasn't really a thing. Not a lot of athletes believed in it, and not a lot of athletes did it. So I was like, okay, because when I first moved to the US, not only was I levels below the fighters there, the amateur fighters there, I was nowhere near. So what am I going to do that's going to give me that mental edge more than even a physical edge, but to feel like I'm working on something that they are yet to work on and they're not even working on. And then from a physical standpoint, how am I gonna get my punches to be respected? How am I gonna get my speed to be faster than they are? How am I going to beat them? And so the boxing that I came with from the Arab world wasn't enough. And the strength and conditioning that I did back in the Arab world was more of old school, pull-ups, push-ups, and not a lot of that explosive stuff, just strength.
Well, here's the thing. There's not anything really wrong with that, especially as a young kid, because you got to develop general fitness, right? You got to develop that general strength, which can transfer over into your power. We talked about this yesterday, right? The goal is to get generally strong and be able to understand your body, right? Understand movement and understand where you're at in space. Those things do come into play. So gymnastics, standard weightlifting techniques, sprinting, climbing, all that stuff is good.
Yeah.
When now you're a pro, right? You're 22 years old, right? 21, 22.
22, yeah.
You're super young, but you're a pro now. So you have to treat it as you are a pro.
Exactly.
At the same time, you're still developing your body. You're still young, and you're gonna grow over time. These next 5 to even 8 years, you're gonna see your body grow, and you're going to adapt and form to what you're naturally supposed to be at the end, right? So you're gonna mature, not just mentally, but physically, right? And in that time frame, you're gonna get more explosive, you're gonna get stronger, you're gonna get more resilient, and you're gonna recover because your body's more receptive to taking blows and feeling that tension, right? So you did a good thing by early adopting the strength and conditioning from a higher level, right? Finding and seeking those individuals out to give you the right amount of work that is going to transition you into the next phase of your career. You haven't hit your peak whatsoever. You're still on your way. You have a great ability. You're a hard worker. You have the effort, but you're knowledgeable and you're willing to learn, which is important more than anything. This young lady right here, I met her 7 years ago. She was already had a career, 2-time world champion, but she was always willing to learn. Exactly. And so you can always grow and progress through that. Yeah. So I think that's one thing that I could say just by knowing you for these 2 days. You're so receptive to learning, and always have that, bro. Always keep that in mind, because the moment you stop learning is the moment you stop growing.
Exactly. And I think it's a misconception of when people say you have to have idols in the sport. People sometimes struggle with that because they try to look for idols that have already made it on that TV, or they're idols that are very far to reach, and you can have them as idols, but what you don't know is the best idols that you are going to look up to are the ones that are right next to you. The ones who have made it to where you want to go are sometimes closer than you are looking for. You know, so when I say that, I mean, so I'm idolizing you on how you're working and how scientific you are with your work and how you're always willing to teach. And then I idolize you for how organized and how aware you always are. So idols aren't people who are usually there where you want to go. Idols are people who have the traits that you want to pick up, and if you already have them, they're the traits you want to maintain. You know what I mean? So that's why people tend to look so far away for their idols when sometimes you just have to look over your shoulder.
You're so much wiser than your age, and it was just so interesting because even the conversation that we had earlier, you know, just speaking with you, and that's why I want to ask you, like, you know, coming from where you came from and being here now, I mean, you're far away from home. So what do you see as the differences? And even you coming here, what were the things that you had to learn or adjust to and overcome? Any challenges of just getting away, you know, having that mentality to say, okay, I'm here, I'm out here, I'm in this camp, I'm away from everything that I know and what I'm accustomed to. You know, what were the hardest things that you faced?
So I think everything from A to Z, honestly, if it's, so in the Arab world, the equipment I had training there was maybe compared to here, nothing. We had, the first time I ever hit a heavy bag that doesn't move when you punch it is here in the US. First time I ever saw a double end bag, a speed bag, you know, the first time I jumped rope more than 3 rounds was here. So it's, and the first time I had a proper ring was here, a boxing ring. Other than the rings we would go to the fights in the Arab world, that's another, they were always good. But the rings we had to train, I mean, let's just say that your footwork had to be so good on that ring because the mats are everywhere. And we actually had the mats completely torn one time. These videos are on YouTube because people couldn't believe the stories I had to show them. The mats were torn so bad at one point we had to go into a local gym. You know the mats you drop the weights on? Those thick, heavy mats? Yeah, we took them. We took them from that gym, you know, and we stormed in 15, 20 people and took those mats. And when we took the mats, we didn't even have enough space for them on the ring. So they were just spread out.
Wow.
So not only did you have to worry about being knocked down by your opponent, you had to worry about being knocked down and tripping by the ring. And the ropes were just there for the aesthetic. The ropes were just there because a ring has ropes.
Wow.
You know what I mean? A ring has ropes. But you lean on those ropes, it's the last thing you're ever going to lean on. And you're not coming back. So I had to adapt to, you know, when you go into an unfamiliar space and you see so much unknowns, now how am I going to make that familiar? And how am I going to be comfortable with it? And being the first to do something, you need to understand that you're also going to be the first to make a lot of mistakes. And I was okay with that. Because if I'm going to be the first professional boxer from Saudi Arabia to turn pro internationally, or the first from the Arab world to do it, then I'm the first to make a lot of big mistakes. Small mistakes, big mistakes, you name it, I've made that mistake. You know, so I was fine with that because I went in with that mentality of I'm setting stone for the people who will come after me. And I was okay with making the mistakes, but all the boxing stuff aside, these were the easiest mistakes I had to overcome. The hardest mistakes were being away from family, my country, and not only being away from my family, but the bad days you have in training. As a person in a place hours and hours and thousands of miles away, you always want to call family, but there's a different time zone. So by the time I was done at 6, 7 p.m., everyone is fast asleep. Who's gonna be awake to hear my cries or hear my complaints? No one.
This podcast is brought to you by Vivo Barefoot. Now check out vivobarefoot.com. That's the minimalistic shoe that I've been rocking on all my videos. If you've been watching my Instagram and YouTube, those are the shoes that I've been wearing to help my foot gain full foot functionality, strengthen up the intrinsic muscles of the feet to allow myself to perform better, and then also reduce the risk of injury. Now I personally like the Geo Racer Knit and the Primus Light 3. Check them out. Go to vivobarefoot.com and get the discount code DARU15 to get 15% off your final purchase. All right, now let's get on to the podcast.
That's gonna mold your character though, man. Like,
you're going to be able to not have to succumb to that governor, right? And a lot of times when young kids, and you got to look at this like you're in university, you're in like Hurt University, right? And for me, when I left my home, when I left here and went to university, now it's way different. You know, I was only hours away, where you're thousands and thousands of miles away. It still felt like you were on an island by yourself because you couldn't relate to anybody, especially you know, for what you have to do. But again, this is going to help you cope with all these other stresses that are going to come with this profession. You see what I'm saying? And when the times get rough, and they will get rough, especially in fights, right, you'll be able to overcome that because of all these situations that you've been put on and put in. And now you can overcome all the other obstacles that come your way because there's a reason why you're here. There's a real reason, right? I think everybody has their own journey. I feel like everybody has it already written. You just got to follow along with the journey and accept it and also do your best while you're in it.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying?
Exactly. And it's crazy how you say that you don't have many people you could relate to when you move far away. But even for boxers, the only people you could relate to in my area or in my place, being alone, the only people I could relate to were the same people punching me in the face. You know.
Boxing.
So
It's an
exactly.
interesting thing in
So
that
it
way.
was.
But you know what though? There's a bond there that's way different, bro.
Exactly. There is a bond and stuff, but the thing is, I sought out to do something that I didn't have a blueprint to. So, and that just makes it way more difficult. But you know, no pressure, no story.
Yeah.
That makes it much more difficult, but it also makes it much more fun. You know, so it's like whatever I go through, I can talk about, I can teach, and I could talk about with so much confidence that I've went through something that I want so many others to go through, but no one else has. So it's something, you know, good to have. You know, God presented me with a chance to write history. How could I turn this down? No matter what trials I was going to go through, difficulties, hard times, you know, there's always an opposite to everything. The hard times come with good. You know, it's like when they say you're going to find joy where there is pain, and you're going to find sunshine where there's rain. So it's like, it's always going to be,
reciprocation.
yeah, it's always going to,
That's it.
there's always
Like,
going to be both. So just have to be
Accepting of it.
patient. And you know, the thing with patience is, with patience, if you practice patience good enough, with patience, nothing ever happens to you. It all happens for you. You just have to be patient enough to
let
let
it-
that open up and see that.
Do you feel like you're a patient person, or do you feel like you have to work on it?
I feel like I'm learning to become more patient because with patience it's weird. So don't ever think you're a patient person, because every single time you're going to think you're a patient person, you're going to be faced with a challenge or a difficulty that's going to test your patience longer than the one before did. You know, so you could be patient for a week one time and be like, man, I'm patient. Next time you're gonna have to be patient for months. Then one time you're gonna have to be patient for years. But be confident that when you hit that point that will teach you it was good that you were patient, because you saw why you shouldn't have done, or you shouldn't have trusted, or you shouldn't have worked with whoever you were going to, or whatever we're talking about, whatever difficulty. When it rolls out and your life pans out, you know, and you see that it's good that I was patient because this is where God wanted me to be, or this is where the universe wanted me to be, whatever you believe in, you know. So just trust your ability to be patient, and trust that you have to be more patient with time. It's crazy, you know.
He's so young and he speaks like this. It's so.
Okay, okay.
I
Yeah,
know.
she's
I
good.
It's so, because it's just so. You know, listen. I've been around boxing for 24 years, and I've met so many different fighters, and I've learned so much. But it's a breath of fresh air, and it's kudos to you for.
They're out there.
Yeah, of course
glad
they
we
are.
s-
Of
he
course,
came
but
over
he's
here.
Yeah, but like he sought you out.
Exactly.
You sought out. I mean, Buddy McGirt. Tell the story. I mean,
Yeah, I was
going
gonna
to
ask about that. How'd you guys meet?
But tell the story about before that. Like,
Yeah,
you know, what you
so-
shared with me earlier.
So it's like she said right now, me and Coach Buddy met long before we actually met. Let me just say that, because when I first moved to the US, I told you I was levels below the amateurs. And right when I was almost as good as the amateurs, COVID hit. And then I moved with my coach then into his garage at his house and trained for 6 months. And then one day he came, he's like, you know what, I know a gym that's open, you know, low-key, cops can't see anything and stuff, but it's a professional fighter's gym. I'm like, come on, I'm almost as good as the amateurs. Now you're telling me I'm gonna go spar pros and stuff. He's like, yeah, it's Buddy McGirt's gym. I'm like, what? He's like, Buddy McGirt. I was like, Buddy McGirt is in LA? He's like, yeah. So leave that story aside now. I have Buddy McGirt mentioned on my Instagram story a year and a half before that day, sitting in my college dorm room studying his jab. I have him mentioned on my Instagram story. I didn't even know he was a coach then. I have him mentioned on my Instagram story, and I'm studying his jab at 2 a.m. at night. My roommate is sleeping right there, but I don't really care. You know, I have him mentioned on my Instagram studying his jab, and I have it captioned, best jab at Buddy McGirt Boxing. A year and a half later, I meet Coach Buddy, I'm sparring in his gym. One conversation leads to another. I'm like, okay, so this didn't happen by accident. So if you miss 100% of the chances, you don't take.
Yeah.
And now I was thrown right there. There's nothing easier than seeing someone you've studied right in front of you. Take that chance, you know, take that leap. Like I DM'd you on Instagram, send your emails, send your DMs, because you'll find it crazy that the people who will respond to you are the people who know most about their job.
Yeah.
And the people who are best at their job
Will respond.
are the ones that are going to respond, because one day they were where you were.
Yeah. And what's the worst they can say? No.
Exactly.
At least you tried.
Then
Yeah.
what, you have nothing to lose and everything to gain.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I'm glad you reached out, man. Like, where do you think that, well, let's say this. One, where do you see boxing going now with all these other things going on? You got the influencer boxing and everything else. I know I want to bring this up to a real boxer, but I am. You know, where do you see boxing going? Like, this is obviously a sport that you love. Yeah. It's what you know, put your sights on. Where do you see it in the future, and where do you see yourself in boxing?
Yeah.
Well, I'll start by saying I just want to be the first world champion for Saudi Arabia. I want to be the first undisputed champion for Saudi Arabia. I want to be the first multi-weight world champion.
Let's do this. Let's take that back. Don't say want, say I am.
Okay.
Say I am. You got to speak it to existence, bro.
Yeah. You have to
Speak it to existence. You know, law of attraction and manifestation is something that I'm very big on. So I'm going to say right now, I am the first world champion for Saudi Arabia.
You heard.
I am the first undisputed champion for Saudi Arabia, and I'm the first undisputed champion and multi-weight champion for Saudi Arabia and the whole Arab world.
Absolutely.
The beautiful thing about coming from a country in the Arab world is that we're so united, where when you're representing one country, you're representing all. Especially when you're the first to do it for one country, you're also the first to do it for all. And that's just a blessing to have. You know, I'm very blessed to be there. I'm very grateful, and it always keeps me humble, because I know that out of the millions and millions and millions of people in the world, God chose me to be on that path. But make no mistake, if I don't do it the right way, then someone else would be chosen. You know, so it's like I have to live right to get it right. I have to live good to get good. And I have to try to be the best, so one day I could be the best.
I've seen a lot of fighters. I've worked with a shit ton of fighters. I work with world champions. She's one of them. Not to blow smoke, but I can see tendencies. I can see things that you see in a person from a character standpoint, and you have the ability to be great, right? You just gotta live in your truth and know what you're great at.
Yeah.
Right? It's knowing your strengths, knowing yourself, and being positive and understanding how to go about that process of learning and growing. And it's gonna take time.
Exactly. Yeah.
But once it gets there and you're there, you're like, oh, I'm untouchable, right?
Yeah.
And you still gotta learn. You still gotta grow.
Exactly.
I'm gonna be honest, man. I'm excited for you, for real. I'm excited for you.
I appreciate that. You know, when you have the right idols, it gets you set for it. And like I said, when your idols are around you, It's just something to be grateful for, and that's the position I'm in. But like you said, then where is boxing going? I honestly think that boxing is going to its peak right now, especially heading towards international fights. And we see the work that Saudi Arabia is doing. We see the work that the Arab world is doing. But I feel like right now, it's something that's very known in the Arab world and internationally, that Saudi Arabia is the fastest growing economy in the world right now. And with the work that they're doing for boxing, you know, I just feel like that's a blessing, not only for the Arab world, but a blessing for boxing itself. The big fights are happening because they are willing to invest, you know, and sometimes they are willing to invest that money that other promoters are not willing to invest in these fights, and that's why they're not happening. So I just really appreciate the work that's happening there. And then I see boxing drifting towards the Middle East a little in the next few years, but as long as the big fights are happening and we have good athletes and good boxers coming up, that's the best way to do, because people idolize athletes all the time. So I want people to idolize athletes like Muhammad Ali, you know, again, and Mike Tyson and all that stuff. I want people to say, even if they're not into boxing, they want to idolize that boxer. So that's what I want to be one day to people, and that's what I want to see from people one day. So another thing is with the influencers boxing, they bring exposure to the sport. I mean, we can't kid ourselves right now. They bring exposure, and they sell, like you said earlier, they sell out. But as long as there's a clear separation between influencer boxing and the real boxers, I'm good with that, you know.
Okay, so here we go. This is where you're gonna get some pushback, because when you say that, that's like, okay, you say celebrity boxing, what do you call it, white collar boxing or something like that.
Yeah.
It's still boxing, right? And I'm not for the one side or the other. What I am saying is that when you got fans coming that are general fans, that are actually diehard fans, and then you have, you know, the influencer fans per se, they look at it as that's just boxing, right? So from a general perspective or from a global perspective, boxing is boxing. So I think it's more important for influencers to really engulf themselves in actually training the right ways. And one thing I can say about Jake Paul, is that we've seen it. He does train, and he's an athlete, and he has the right amount of people around him, and he's committed. Now, is he as committed as the kids that started or as you? Absolutely not, because there's more time in the game, right? There's more experience there. But to say that he's not a boxer, well, that's being disrespectful.
So you see but that's not what I was saying. I was saying, and that's an argument that everyone's going to talk about. But I'm not really talking about Jake Paul, but because Jake Paul is on the brink of fighting an actual boxer. But until he does, there is still that separation between Jake Paul and an actual boxer. So that's what I mean by as long as there's a separation between influencer boxing and real boxers, then okay. If Jake Paul fights a real boxer, win or lose, he's a real boxer. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But don't talk about
Let's say this though, right? Is he a boxer because he fought a boxer, or is he a boxer because he trains boxing? Is there a difference, right? Now, if I train boxing, right, because I fought MMA, but I train boxing, I'm not a boxer, right? Because I didn't have a boxing match. But if he's training boxing every day and he gets in a boxing ring and it's boxing rules, he's not a boxer. So you're gonna have that. I'm not, like I said, I'm Switzerland.
I think it comes to like the fans. I think that's a big part of it, and like, you know, like you said, like the actual the real fans they're never really going to accept Jake Paul. Like that's the bottom line. Like,
you sure?
Really, I know.
I mean, look, honestly,
I don't think they're really going to accept it. You know what I mean? But I don't think they need to. But I don't think they need to accept it. That's what I'm saying. I don't think Jake Paul. I don't think he's gonna, you know. I mean, listen, this is just my opinion. Like I said, I don't think it matters. Like, I don't knock him either. Like,
he's also going to MMA too.
Yeah, he's going to do whatever he can do to make money. And listen, he's not going to stay there to get his head bashed in for that long. Why should he? He doesn't need to. He's killing it. You know what I mean? He's stupid to. He's going to do exactly what he wants. He's got his plan laid out, and he's shocking everybody else. I think that And I think that that's the thing, though. I think that it's really the fans that make the difference. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I think it doesn't matter. Like, people are still watching him. It's like the Mayweather effect. You know, people watch him because they hate him. They don't watch him because they love him. You know what I
But
mean? They wanna
listen,
see
he
what
has
happens.
people who watch him who love him, though.
Yeah, yes,
That's
he does.
the thing.
Of course,
And
everybody
then,
Let me
does.
say something. Okay, so here's a perfect example, right? We talk about real boxing and not real boxing. Floyd's fighting Logan Paul. Is that real boxing? Because Floyd's obviously decorated.
But he's proven. You know what I mean? Like, that's the thing. I think it comes with the respect.
You see, when I say there has to be a clear separation, what's frustrating is after this fight, the fans of Logan Paul started asking questions about, could Logan Paul beat Canelo?
Oh.
Could Jake Paul beat Canelo?
I know.
Actually, they weren't asking. They were like, we want to see that. I think he will. I think, but he fought Mayweather.
It's delusion
No, but
that
that's
they've
not
created.
Exactly, because to your general fans who know nothing about boxing but know only about the Paul brothers and stuff, they don't really understand the weight classes. They don't understand why they're there. They don't understand all that. So when they see a Logan Paul against a Mayweather, they think Logan Paul can now go and fight Joshua. But
you
that's not what happens. You know what I mean? But I do, and I really have to be honest, I really do appreciate the fans they bring in. Because these fans, once they actually fall in love with boxing, they are going to want more than just influencer boxing. And then they are going to fall into more fighters and
Well,
more
it's
boxers.
exposing you guys to a different kind of fan
And let's not
base.
forget who changed the game, and I believe that who changed the game into making social media very important right now. And a lot of people are gonna say, oh, but you could be a social media. No. Social media sometimes dictates how much money you're gonna get from a fight, because it's how many people are gonna tune in.
It's attention.
And Jake Paul, Logan Paul, influencer boxing honestly did change that. When you're a real fighter right now, and you're marketable and you have a social media following, you're getting more money than your ordinary
Well, you're not even that
fighter.
you're getting more money. You're getting the opportunity, because even if you can't fight, that's the
Yeah,
crazy part. It
yeah,
doesn't
yeah,
matter.
exactly.
If you can be like not good at all, but if you're put in the right fight, and just because you have the following, those people are going to think.
Exactly.
You know, it's.
Well, here's another thing. Okay, there's fighting and there's boxing, right? You can get in there and fight. Anybody can go in there and fight.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a difference. Boxing is a sport. Boxing is a science. Boxing is a technique. Fighting is fighting. I can go in there. Anybody that has like natural abilities to just throw hands can go in there and get lucky and get a good shot off, and it's over. Right? So you got to separate that. So if we were to go ahead and put this in terms of like structure, I believe that Jake and Logan can fight, right? And I'm saying that as in like if they get in a street fight with somebody that can't fight or has a little bit of skill, they may beat them, right? Because of the fact that they're athletic, they're powerful, they have some skill in a sense, right?
Jake more than Logan. Just put it out there.
Well, I'm saying that because like, well, you seen him how he hit Floyd. And I work with Logan a little bit. He's got a little bit of skill. It's not crazy great. There's a lot of holes, but he's still an athletic kid with a hard punch. And I've seen plenty of guys that don't know how to throw a punch and still knock people out. Right? So it's that lucky shit that happens. And getting away from this shit, but getting back to the real boxing. Just kidding. Not really. So now we got a fight lined up, right? That's why you're here. You're in Florida, training with Buddy, training with me. She's talking your ear off. So what's the goal, man? What we want to do in this fight? What do you feel? What do you feel that you want to do? Not worry about the opponent, but like, how do you want to solidify this? And how is this going to help you catapult your career?
I want to make a statement. However it comes, if it's a knockout, if it's to display my boxing, if it's to display my IQ, I want to make a statement for everyone around the world, and especially the Arab world and Saudi Arabia. Just make them proud, so make a statement. And you know what, like you always say, I will make a statement. God willing, I will make a statement. And that night when I'm there fight week, the pressure is on so much that there is no way to go but forward. So I like that pressure, because the pressure is going to be on you anyways. If you're doing good, you're going to have pressure on to do better. If you're doing bad, you're going to have pressure on to do good. So it's going to be there anyways. It's just the road you choose to walk with pressure is what matters the most.
How are you handling that pressure?
I mean, it's just expect it. So, and I always say that. I say that when you expect something to happen, it doesn't shock you when it comes. It doesn't shock you when it hits you. Yeah. So when you're about to do something in front of a large crowd and it's boxing, you know, it's fighting, the pressure is going to be there. The doubt is going to be there. The fear is going to be there. All the emotions are going to be there. So expect them to be there, because when you expect them to be there, it's not going to shock you once it comes. You're going to know how to deal with it. When something seems natural, we know how to deal with it, you know? So I always understand that the pressure is going to be there and all of it is going to be there, but I'm so confident in my preparation. And I give 100% in my preparation, where I know perform means win. Perform means statement. So in that locker room and fight weekend throughout all of camp, I'm just focused on perform. Because if I start focusing on winning, that's pressure, doubt, and fear playing in. Once you start focusing on the winning. But once you start focusing on perform, and you know that that means win, you're gonna do it right, and you're going to perform, and you're going to get that win. So that's one thing on how I deal with it. I would just say the visualization techniques for the athletes coming up, or for the athletes who are even already made it, is to play over and over exactly as close as you can get the situation that you feel you are going to be in. But you have to play all perspectives of it. So my mental performance coach, I have a mental performance coach, he's from Egypt. And fight week, except the 2 nights before the fight, and I'll explain why. But fight week, he had me doing visualization in that area by, I shut down all the lights in my room. I went on YouTube, I searched crowd chants in stadium, and brightness off, the whole room, closed my eyes, and I just heard the chants. Because I was so worried about the amount of people that are gonna be there. So he was like, okay, well, you know what? You have to start meeting them all right now. You have to be there right now. So I imagine myself in the fight, and that video on YouTube had the cheers, had the boos, had everything. So when the cheers would come on, the hard cheers, I'd imagine I just knocked them down. And when the boos came in, because I was in Saudi Arabia, and that's my homeland, you know, I'd imagine he just landed the punch, right? He just, you know, they're announcing his name or whatever it is. So I had to visualize as close as possible as what the actual situation is going to be. But there's something very important about visualization now. You have to only limit the visualization to your performance. You cannot go to post-performance. You cannot go to post-result. You have to only visualize the performance and both perspectives of the results you want. You want to visualize the loss and the win, and you want to visualize a good performance and a bad performance, because how you carry yourself in both is very important. But visualization post-performance and post-result will lead into a bad result and a bad performance, because you're going to be looking forward to the time with family after the win or the
You're already
performance.
past that moment.
You're already past the moment. You're going to be looking forward to your interviews, your media. It's going to make you fast forward and forget about the performance. So you have to stay in that performance.
What about on the lead up to the actual fight? Like to walk out?
Visualize all of it. Visualize all of it.
Until the end of the fight.
Yeah, until the end of the fight. You can visualize before the fight all you want.
Yeah.
All you want. I visualized everything I wanted to do, and I did it. In my fight, I had a gazelle punch that I threw that was a hook. I visualized that in my head maybe thousands of times. And you know what? It looked horrible when I did it in real life, but in my head, I knew I wanted to do it after I heard him. And I hit him and I threw that gazelle punch. Did it land? No. But did I visualize the exact same moment and it happened? Yes. So it works. You know, it has to. You have to not only visualize, but know that you have to have faith in your visualization. Don't just do it because you're gonna do it, but don't ever visualize post.
2 days though?
Because the closer you get to the fight, the harder it is to stop visualization, post-performance, and post-result. So the day of the weigh-in and the day of the fight, he told me, that's it for visualization. Don't even think about visualization and visualizing moments that you want to live. You've already done the work. You've already been there countless times.
Just be in it.
It's just going to be harder now.
When do you start Visualization.
From as soon as you start camp or as soon as you start your career. I want to visualize me being a world champion, how I'm going to carry that belt. If I want to do it now, I will, you know?
Yeah.
But a little part of that is visualizing post-performance and post-result. So you don't want to do that.
You want the success.
Try to always stay in the present and try to always stay in the moment and deal with the moment and the present you have right now. That's the moment you want to think about and overcome. And you know, one thing my mental performance coach told me was, I one time told him, I was talking to him about how hard the sparring was for that fight and how, you know, I'm just going through it, all of it right now. And he told me something so good. He said that sometimes the trials and difficulties that you go through during a build-up for one moment is also experience for all the moments that are going to come after it. And you need to believe that, because not because you're going through something leading up to one moment you've been waiting for, it doesn't mean that everything you've been going through is only for that one moment.
Of course, and you'll see that through experience.
Exactly. It's for all the other moments that you're going through. You know, all the sparring you're going to go through, all the decisions you have to make, it's going to be easier to make them later on.
And you'll be grateful for those hard moments. Like I've been through so many, I've been, you know, over 30 fights professionally and everything and fighting all over and going through those moments that I'm like, now I'm like, what am I going to see that's going to shock me?
Exactly.
You know,
You never
like,
go through the same thing twice and have the same outcome. You need to know and trust yourself that you've been there, done that now. And you need to trust yourself that, you know what, no, okay, maybe I'm in the same situation right now. If it's a fight, if it's a argument, if it's a breakup, you need to understand all those little difficulties and trials that you're going through. Don't ever be scared of the difficulties you're going to face that you've already once faced, because the next time you're going to face it, you're going to be a different person who's going to face these difficulties. You know, so, and I was listening to someone who was talking on his podcast, and he said something very, very powerful. He said that us as humans or as athletes or people, we unlock our maximum potential when we put the most stress on ourselves. And that's why I was saying outside when we were talking, I was saying, I don't mind the traveling from one country to another with Coach Buddy, because to me, as soon as you take me outside of my home and my family, wherever I go, it's going to be the same. Wherever I go, I'm going to be as uncomfortable, and it's a place of work for me. So you unlock the maximum potential where you put most stress. And imagine this, instead of the majority of the people in this world, sometimes we find people that live their life thinking that they are the ones who want to be rescued. They are the victims. But imagine just changing that mentality a little, from going from you are the one to be rescued to you are the one to rescue. Instead of you are the victim, you are the superhero to help the victim. So when you go through something tough, you need to alter that mentality where, you know what, now I can help others who go through it. Why can't you be that person? Why can't you be the one to make the difference and the changes and the experiences you go through? Don't wait for those to help you, because they will come, but after they help you, you need to start out to help others, and that's something very important to have. You know what I mean? And it's something to live by.
Man, pay attention to this young man. I'll tell you this, I feel like I got a diamond in the rough, man. You heard it here first, all right, exclusive. Let them know where they can find you, social media, and also, we can say the date? Can we say the date?
Yeah. February 25th is the date.
February 25th, Saudi Arabia. My man's back in the ring, second pro fight. So be on the lookout for this young man. He's going to be a star, absolutely, and world champion.
Yes.
But, social media, let them know.
You could find me on The Real Zizo, The Real Zizo on Instagram.
Maureen Shea.
Oh, Maureen _Shea.
You know where you can find me at. See y'all next time.